In Class 6, you have learnt about some fibers obtained from plants. You also learnt that wool and silk fibers are obtained from animals. Wool is obtained from the fleece or hair of sheep or yak. Silk fibers come from cocoons of the silk moth. Do you know which part of the sheep's body yields fibers? Are you aware how these fibers are converted into the woolen yarn that we buy from the market to knit sweaters? Do you have any idea how silk fibers are made into silk, which is woven into saris? In this chapter, we shall try to find answers to these questions. Wool comes from sheep, yak, and some other animals. These wool-yielding animals bear hair on their body. Do you know why these animals have a thick coat of hair? Hair traps a lot of air. Air is a poor conductor of heat, as you would learn in Chapter 4. So, hair keeps these animals warm. Wool is derived from these hairy fibers. Like us, the hairy skin of the sheep has two types of fibers that form its fleece: the coarse beard hair and the fine, soft underhair close to the skin. The fine hair provides the fibers for making wool. Some breeds of sheep possess only fine underhair. Their parents are specially chosen to give birth to sheep which have only soft underhair. This process of selecting parents for obtaining special characters in their offspring, such as soft underhair in sheep, is termed selective breeding. Several breeds of sheep are found in different parts of our country. However, the fleece of sheep is not the only source of wool, though wool commonly available in the market is sheep wool. Yak wool is common in Tibet and Ladakh. Mohair is obtained from angora goats, found in hilly regions such as Jammu and Kashmir. Wool is also obtained from goat hair. The underfur of Kashmiri goat is soft. It is woven into fine shawls called pashmina shawls. The fur, or hair, on the body of camels is also used as wool. Llama and alpaca, found in South America, also yield wool. From fibers to wool. For obtaining wool, sheep are reared. Their hair is cut and processed into wool. Let us learn about this process. Rearing and breeding of sheep. If you travel to the hills in Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttaranchal, Arunachal Pradesh, and Sikkim, or the plains of Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, and Gujarat, you can see shepherds taking their herds of sheep for grazing. Sheep are herbivores and prefer grass and leaves. Apart from grazing sheep, rearers also feed them on a mixture of pulses, corn, jowar, oil cakes, which is the material left after taking out oil from seeds and minerals. In winter, sheep are kept indoors and fed on leaves, grain, and dry fodder. Sheep are reared in many parts of our country for wool. Table 3.1 gives the names of some breeds of sheep reared in our country for producing wool. The quality and texture of the fibers obtained from them is also indicated in the table. Certain breeds of sheep have a thick coat of hair on their body which yields good quality wool in large quantities. As mentioned earlier, these sheep are selectively bred, with one parent being a sheep of good breed. Once the reared sheep have developed a thick growth of hair, the hair is shaved off for getting wool. Processing fibers into wool. The wool which is used for knitting sweaters or for weaving shawls is the finished product of a long process, which involves the following steps. Step 1. The fleece of the sheep along with a thin layer of skin is removed from its body. This process is called shearing. Machines similar to those used by barbers are used to shave off hair. Usually, hair are removed during the hot weather. This enables sheep to survive without their protective coat of hair. The hair provide woolen fibers. Woolen fibers are then processed to obtain woolen yarn. Shearing does not hurt the sheep, just as it does not hurt when you get a haircut or your father shaves his beard. Do you know why? The uppermost layer of the skin is dead. Also, the hair of sheep grow again just as your hair does. Step 2. The sheared skin with hair is thoroughly washed in tanks to remove grease, dust, and dirt. This is called scouring. Nowadays, scouring is done by machines. Step 3. After scouring, sorting is done. The hairy skin is sent to a factory where hair of different textures are separated or sorted. Step 4. The small fluffy fibers, called burrs, are picked out from the hair. These are the same burrs which sometimes appear on your sweaters. The fibers are scoured again and dried. This is the wool ready to be drawn into fibers. Step 5. The fibers can be dyed in various colors, as the natural fleece of sheep and goats is black, brown, or white. Step 6. The fibers are straightened, combed, and rolled into yarn. The longer fibers are made into wool for sweaters, and the shorter fibers are spun and woven into woolen cloth. The processing of fiber into wool can be represented as follows: shearing, scouring, sorting, cleaning of burrs, dyeing, rolling. Occupational hazard. Wool industry is an important means of livelihood for many people in our country. But sorters' job is risky as sometimes they get infected by a bacterium, anthrax, which causes a fatal blood disease called sorter's disease. Such risks faced by workers in any industry are called occupational hazards. Silk fibers are also animal fibers. Silkworms spin the silk fibers. The rearing of silkworms for obtaining silk is called sericulture. Find out from your mother, aunt, or grandmother the kind of silk saris they have. List the kinds of silk. Before we discuss the process of obtaining silk, it is necessary to know the interesting life history of the silk moth. Life history of silk moth. The female silk moth lays eggs, from which hatch larvae, which are called caterpillars or silkworms. They grow in size, and when the caterpillar is ready to enter the next stage of its life history called pupa, it first weaves a net to hold itself. Then it swings its head from side to side in the form of the figure of 8. During these movements of the head, the caterpillar secretes fiber made of a protein which hardens on exposure to air and becomes silk fiber. Soon, the caterpillar completely covers itself by silk fibers and turns into pupa. This covering is known as cocoon. The further development of the pupa into moth continues inside the cocoon. Silk fibers are used for weaving silk cloth. Can you imagine that the soft silk yarn is as strong as a comparable thread of steel? The silk yarn, or thread, is obtained from the cocoon of the silk moth. There is a variety of silk moths which look very different from one another, and the silk yarn they yield is different in texture, whether coarse, smooth, shiny, and so on. Thus, tassar silk, muga silk, kosa silk, and others are obtained from cocoons spun by different types of moths. The most common silk moth is the mulberry silk moth. The silk fiber from the cocoon of this moth is soft, lustrous, and elastic, and can be dyed in beautiful colors. Sericulture, or culture of silkworms, is a very old occupation in India. India produces plenty of silk on a commercial scale. In India, women are significantly involved in various kinds of industries related to silk production. These include rearing of silkworms, reeling of silk from cocoons, and processing of raw silk into fabrics. By their enterprise, they contribute to the nation's economy. China leads the world in silk production. India also ranks among the leading silk-producing countries. You may also describe the life history in your own words. From cocoon to silk. For obtaining silk, moths are reared and their cocoons are collected to get silk threads. Rearing silkworms. A female silk moth lays hundreds of eggs at a time. The eggs are stored carefully on strips of cloth or paper and sold to silkworm farmers. The farmers keep eggs under hygienic conditions and under suitable conditions of temperature and humidity. The eggs are warmed to a suitable temperature for the larvae to hatch from eggs. This is done when mulberry trees bear a fresh crop of leaves. The larvae, called caterpillars or silkworms, eat day and night and increase enormously in size. The larvae are kept in clean bamboo trays along with freshly chopped mulberry leaves. After 25 to 30 days, the caterpillars stop eating and move to a tiny chamber of bamboo in the tray to spin cocoons. Small racks or twigs may be provided in the trays to which cocoons get attached. The caterpillar or silkworm spins the cocoon inside, which develops the silk moth. Discovery of silk. The exact time of discovery of silk is perhaps unknown. According to an old Chinese legend, the Empress Silongqi was asked by the Emperor Huangti to find the cause of the damaged leaves of mulberry trees growing in their garden. The empress found white worms eating up mulberry leaves. She also noticed that they were spinning shiny cocoons around them. Accidentally, a cocoon dropped into her cup of tea and a tangle of delicate threads separated from the cocoon. Silk industry began in China and was kept a closely guarded secret for hundreds of years. Later on, traders and travelers introduced silk to other countries. The route they traveled is still called the Silk Route. Processing silk. A pile of cocoons is used for obtaining silk fibers. The cocoons are kept under the sun or boiled or exposed to steam. The silk fibers separate out. The process of taking out threads from the cocoon for use as silk is called reeling the silk. Reeling is done in special machines, which unwind the threads or fibers of silk from the cocoon. Silk fibers are then spun into silk threads, which are woven into silk cloth by weavers. Did you know? In terms of the number of sheep, India ranks third in the world, behind China and Australia. However, the New Zealand sheep are known to yield the best wool.